right. Well, hello, I'm Rich Bialik, and welcome to the Bialik Group Report. Today, we're really pleased to have Steve Ciesinski with us. He is a very successful entrepreneur, investor, and now lecturer at Stanford Business School. Steve and I have known each other for quite a few years. He's followed my journey in Africa with my work at GTP and On Afrique, and Steve has had quite a journey of his own throughout technology and now in Africa. So I'd like to just hand it over to Steve. And, Steve, thank you for joining us today. Welcome. And why don't you tell the folks a bit about yourself and how you came to your current place in the world?
Well, thanks, Rich. It's really great being on this podcast with you. We've known each other, as you mentioned, for quite a while, and I know you've been after me to do this, so here I am. Just for everybody, I'll be brief. I started my career back on the East Coast of the U.S., went to school back there and got my engineering degree, worked for Procter& Gamble for a while, and got the bug to come out to the West Coast and get my business degree. And I was fortunate enough to get into Stanford at the time and join them. After a short consulting stint with Booz Allen and Hamilton, I decided I really wanted to get back into operations as I was with P&G at Procter& Gamble after engineering school in Boston. So I joined up with Applied Materials.
Mm.
Applied was a really tiny company at that time. It had just gone public, but we were in the midst of some real economic trouble in the US, actually globally, and business wasn't also good. Applied was the very first independent semiconductor capital equipment manufacturer. They made the equipment that made chips. And previously, companies like Intel, Texas Instruments, and so on made their own equipment. So this was an independent foray. It was a public company. We turned it around after a really tough 18-month period and got it profitable, and it went on, and now it's worth, billions of dollars, of course, and has spawned a whole new industry of semiconductor capital equipment. You're hearing a lot about that as
Hmm.
well with the CHIPS Act and a few other things here in the US. From there, I got recruited to join as the number two person at a company called Resumex. Excuse me, Resumex came later with Octel Communications, voicemail company. And voicemail at the time was just a bunch of disparate type equipment that never worked properly, and people would leave messages that get lost and jumbled and so on. So we had a central server that we hooked up to the central office or to a PBX at the time, a private branch exchange that most companies had. And we took that company public, and it ended up being a very, very highly successful company, got acquired for a few billion dollars in the last part of the last century. So from there, I joined one of my favorite companies called Resumex. Resumex was a company that was really the pioneer of using digital technology, digitizing faxes and papers and operating open job requisitions, resumes, CVs, and then through really crude artificial intelligence, was able to match these open job requisitions with the right people. And then previously, you'd go into a recruiting office and you'd see lots and lots of paper. It was either CVs and resumes or open job requisitions, and recruiters were pulling their hair out because they couldn't figure out how to match any of these things because papers would just get all mixed up and so forth. So we turned that into a really interesting technology, a product, and the company did extremely well. We ended up with about 800 enterprise global 2000 type companies. Company was eventually sold to a Midwest company. I stayed on a contract, but then I bought it back in a leveraged buyout. I liked the company so much,
Hmm.
but eventually it did get acquired for a very large sum, twice over for our investors. So everybody was pretty happy. From there, I had a number of consulting assignments. I was trying to figure out what to do, and I got a call about a company called SRI, Stanford Research Institute. And SRI is well known amongst innovators because they're famous for things like Siri, the technology that now is part of Apple. The Da Vinci product, Intuitive Surgical, is a company that we spun out
Mhm.
that is a mechanical robot operated by a surgeon to perform real surgeries. And this company is now worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Nuance, text to speech, voice to text uh, technology. A lot of interesting technology has come out of SRI. Early internet development, of course. The mouse that's currently used all was invented at SRI or Park, which is now part
Mhm.
of SRI. So I was there for about 10 years. Really enjoyed myself. Worked with a lot of different inventors, scientists, and spun out lots of different companies. And during that time, I also was able to be asked to be a lecturer at Stanford Business School, otherwise known as the GBS, the Graduate School of Business, or GSB. And of course, I say I've been there now 15 years. I can't believe it. We created coursework recently in the last 10 of those years to focus in on areas of the world that were not being served very properly. So most of the courses at Stanford, many other business schools in the U.S. are all Silicon Valley based case studies and so forth. So we decided with our students, about half of them came from outside the U.S. and many from developing economies, to focus on Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, places where traditionally entrepreneurship, innovation,
Mhm.
research, development. These were kind of foreign expressions and words
Right.
in these territories, and yet, it's 75% of when you look at it geographically
Okay.
of what we know as the world today. So it's been a lot of fun working with entrepreneurs, VCs,
Mhm.
investors, innovators in these countries, having them come into my classes like you are later on this
Mhm.
year, and thank you for doing that,
Oh,
talking about what they're up to, talking about either industries, markets, or new innovations that are taking place in these locations. So I've had a really great career. I've really enjoyed all the different things that I've done,
mhm.
both operationally. I guess at heart, I'm an operator, executive, but I've enjoyed teaching, lecturing, and of course, being an advisor or a board member.
Oh, that's great. What a great career, and you can tell you've enjoyed doing it. The path you took with the technology and operations background, really interesting to follow that. I think we met probably early on when you started at SRI. I remember that. I can't believe that's 15 years
I
ago.
think that's right. Yeah.
And it really impressive, how such a great institution, but how it's almost like you had to, disintegrated a bit to reorientate it to where it could be. But what a great experience to have and resources where the seats you have there in Palo Alto, between Park and SRI and out with Stanford. Uh, uh, Great. I think it'd be really a great resource. Would love to be. Well, I am. I'm sitting on one of your classes at the end of next month. But if we could, focus a bit more on what you're doing in Africa, either through Stanford, but maybe you as an individual and a successful entrepreneur. How do you view the African markets? I guess I'd say too, it's not Africa. 54 countries. It's not the United States of Africa.
Right.
It's
Right.
so different. How do you put your arms around that, Steve? And are you focusing on a few verticals or geographies? Let's delve into Africa a bit.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna be headed to Africa a little bit later on this year in May for a big conference. I've
Hmm.
gone on the board of uh, a former student of mine mid-career. He took his MS degree at Stanford Business School a few years ago. He asked me to be on the board of UM6P, which is effectively the Polytechnic of Morocco. It's been founded by the king, and
Hmm.
it really is a tremendous school of engineering and many other areas. It'll be my first trip to Morocco. I'm really looking forward to it. And one of the reasons I'm going there
Hmm.
is they're now holding an annual conference about deep technology.
Wow.
And in particular, UM6P is really trying to lead that effort throughout Africa out of their location in Casablanca or near Casablanca.
Hmm.
So, as you probably have heard recently, the last few years, people have been talking about deep technology and investing in dual technology.
Hmm.
Technology can be used for government, for military, for commercial purposes,
Hmm.
and so on. VCs really like that because technology can be leveraged into different areas. Of course, SRI, even before that term became famous, or SRI was, doing a lot of business with the government, developing new technologies, and then spinning them out. Siri is a great example of a technology that was used for dual purpose for
Hmm.
our military purposes, and then eventually it's become a household word. But in Africa, I'm looking forward to being there. I've been investing there for some time now in Nigeria with a company called Paga that I think you know quite well. In
Yes.
fact, our coursework and our case study the day that you teach will be about I've written a case with Tayo, one of the co-founders of Paga, but also with First Circle, which is a VC
Yep.
firm both out of Uganda as well as Morocco,
Hmm.
and Raba Capital. You might know George,
Oh, yes.
the founder of Raba Capital, Cape Town,
Hmm.
but he services really all of Africa in fintech. I think you're pretty much you're more an expert than I am on this, but fintech has just been a way for Africa to to really try to move ahead and
Right.
get a lot of the unbanked back to having credit and the ability to have checking accounts, savings accounts, and to build a reserve of capital for themselves, even though it may be tiny. It's obviously started with mobile technology out of Kenya that has made things possible, but now that's spread around Africa in a lot of different forms, and that helps the economy move. The more you move money, of course, um, then the economy moves, and people move up into areas where they have some discretionary income and so on, and can start to really develop a more meaningful standard of life than, of course, formerly what they were used to. So I'm really anxious to see how that goes. The Raba Capital, First Circle, and there are so many other now early stage firms, VC firms in Africa. I think that there's now enough capital there to get a lot of these startups through the incubation and accelerator stage. I guess one concern I have, and maybe that's going to be mitigated by something else I'll say, but one concern I have is this Series A gap, Series B growth
Yes.
capital gap.
Exactly. I was just going to ask you about that because I've seen the same thing. There's been a encouraging proliferation of that, pre-seed, seed, Series A, but then it's like there's a wall and it's hard for these firms to get over it. They're stuck. They've hit the wall and they can't get over to that next round.
Yeah, it's really challenging, and you hit upon it. You didn't mean to, but Africa is not one. Many people still think because it's a continent, it's a country. It's not. It's 54 or whatever number of countries existing at the time, and uh, in order to build a real business across Africa, you have to, of course, accommodate all the different government regulations, the different cultures, the way things are being done, whether it's transportation, commerce, banking, you name it. And it's one by one. You just can't do for one country and then
Mhm.
have that stick, completely one for one
Right.
with 10 other countries. You just have to do this. So you pick obviously your largest population, you pick, where you think you can be successful, and you
Mhm.
start to develop something there, and then it grows from there. So it almost needs to be slower unless, you can have some breakthroughs.
Right.
So that's part of the issue with this
Mhm.
Series A gap is, gee, you're successful in X country, let's just say it's Tanzania or Kenya or Nigeria or whatever,
Yep.
South Africa, et cetera. How can you then leverage that and scale your company as quick as you really want to go? So we have some case studies. I won't mention them of
Mhm.
companies that that we teach about in class where they think that they've got the strategy knocked
Mhm.
because it all worked in Nigeria, and now they're trying, two or three different countries simultaneously, and they've really run into problems with the government in terms of how things are being regulated or whether there are employment rules or whatever the
Right.
case may be. That's a big issue.
That is really, and that's we're just talking a little bit before we started that I just started some work with a company actually it's called High Water Bound, but it's meant to deal with that it starts with a supposition that, great, you've launched, you're successful in Nigeria, but you need to grow. And it may not only be geography, it could be a product, but the product may have different licensing requirements. It's different if you're issuing Visa cards versus doing remittance.
Right.
So that navigation, but too often just think, okay, it's a straight line, or I've got this, I'm just going to plot it. But no, it's more discrete, and you've got gaps to jump. And it also comes back to, I think, with in Africa, to I think in many cases to be call it a unicorn, just to have a measure or a metric of success. It's hard to do it with just one product or one market. You need to find a second or a third. And so I see that as a need. I see that as an opportunity as well. And looking to see some of the companies that have done that. Um, and but it's still an early stage. I look back coming out of business school. I was on the other side of the country,
Right. Right.
but I remember coming out, and a big thing there were some of these gaming companies, and there was companies that are gone now. Atari, for example, everybody wanted to join Atari, and they had the answer, but then a year later they're dead, and kind of this leapfrogging around. I feel it's not. I feel in Africa we're learning. There's an expertise coming, and I am encouraged by this early stage funding. But now, and it can be solved, but it's got to take a focused effort against that. Um, and if I
Well,
could
let
say,
me yeah,
go ahead.
let me pick up on it. So one of the other aspects of course, investing and having more money come in and so forth into different countries and into companies is the wise investor before making an investment always wants to know, well, how am I going to get out of this
Yeah.
deal? Okay.
Hmm.
So I'm going to put X amount of money in at a very early stage. Maybe it's even pre-seed,
Hmm.
or seed or Series A. So A, when am I going to get out of this company?
Hmm.
B, how am I going to get out of this company? Because I'm not in it for my entire lifetime.
All
I
right.
have also I have investors called limited partners if I'm a venture capitalist, and
Hmm.
I've got to get them paid back within, let's just say, a 10-year time frame.
Yep.
And so I can't be in it for 15 or 20 years. My the legalities of my contract with LPs don't allow for that.
Hmm.
Now, the predicament is that that means that the company has really got to take off and grow and actually has to have an exit. And in the parlance of exit, that means it's either an IPO,
Hmm.
like we do here in the States, or it's an M&A transaction,
Hmm.
a merger or an acquisition of some sort, right? So where is that going to come from?
Hmm.
And the predicament that Africa has had is that are there large enough companies in Africa that are natural acquirers of certain types of technology-based companies, whether it's in fintech or ag tech or could be insure tech
Hmm.
or other food tech, et cetera, et cetera. Who are these companies? Are they willing? Are they interested? Are they willing? And then will they pay a premium for a high growth company that's technology based? And are they used to using technology? So there could be all sorts of reasons why or why not larger companies in Africa might be interested. And it's just not so easy.
Hmm.
People are trying to equate Africa to India, what's happening now in India,
Hmm.
and previous to that, China. So let's just go through these. China, some years ago went through a big, big burst of venture capital. Well, China is over 1 billion people and one country. Yeah, a
Right.
lot of dialects, a lot of different regions that have localized cultures and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
But, one currency, you know a lot about that. And of course, one major market. That became successful, and then India started growing, and
Hmm.
the VCs from the US went there, came back, went there, came back, and so forth. And it's only been the last, even 10 years where India has really taken off. Once again, a lot of different culture differences from
Yeah.
major city to major city and area within India, but one large population, again, well over a billion people, and of course, one currency. When you look at Africa, how many currencies do you have? And that doesn't include
Yep.
Bitcoin that some countries are starting or at
Right.
least wanting to
Right.
use as their own currency. So,
Yep.
so it's just a different animal that you're working with when you try to draw comparisons between you know uh, India, which could, for all practical purposes, could be its own continent, and same thing
Right.
with China.
Right.
Africa is just not the same, and that's why it's taken so much time.
Yeah. And looking at triggered a thought, just some of the blocks with my prior company, GTP, Global Technology Partners, we
Yeah,
processed, and we really focused on Francophone West Africa. Part of that's where our partners were, and they knew Cote d'Ivoire, for example, but it was also a market where you could price and you could address the this unserved need or underserved need. Two key markets. One were the financial inclusion piece, where you're giving people access to an economy they couldn't because now they had access to Visa, MasterCard networks. But also it served wealthy people that would travel on our Visa card. But there you had a different model compared to Kenya, which was dominated by M-Pesa and the MNOs.
correct.
We just could not succeed there. They were so thinly priced, and they focused more on P2P, local, domestic, and trying to bring Visa and MasterCard work. That just the pricing wasn't right, uh, at least for that service at that time. And I bring up these groups because it's, if you want to go beyond Nigeria, is it do you go to Ghana? Do you try to cobble something together? Or, and if I focus on Nigeria one more time, maybe it's you need to look outside of Africa and think about what Flutterwave did and Paystack did, and it was really American companies that came in and invested or acquired,
Yeah.
a combination American European. And so I'm playing around that in my head. I'm not sure, but I think within Africa I start to group. I have to be careful. It's just not an American perspective. What makes sense from the local on the ground, but you have Francophone West Africa, Francophone Central Africa. You've got Nigeria, and you've got East Africa. South Africa is a world unto its own, and then the whole Arabic North. Do they partner up? Does Arabic North probably looks more towards Europe, France, than they do to Sub-Saharan Africa?
Oh,
So
I
thinking
think that
about,
that's true. We haven't talked about that, but
oh yeah,
there's a
you're going there to Morocco.
a,
Yeah,
a big distinction
yeah.
on that. Again, I'm looking forward to that. But this woman that I know who's founded Global Ventures out of Dubai has written a book now. It just came out um, about the Mid East and about Northern Africa and how that is really flourishing with respect to venture. And I think that they look more toward Europe and
Hmm.
maybe toward Asia
Hmm.
more than I think they look toward Sub-Saharan Africa. I feel like they have more of an identity there
Yeah,
than they do in other parts of Africa, which is of course interesting.
yeah.
So and that's a book that I've started to read, and it's really got some really great examples of entrepreneurs who have been successful. And of course, there is money in Northern Africa, in the Mid East, and that really helps matters as well. Um, I know, I was talking about Paga, but Paga, to your point earlier, Paga looked at the rest of Africa and decided that maybe their next business opportunity might be away from Africa. So they looked at Indonesia very closely,
Yeah.
and I noticed they also looked at Mexico very closely because
Hmm.
they really felt like the kinds of products that they were trying to provide
Hmm.
in their market research indicated that those two highly populated countries,
Hmm.
Mexico and Indonesia, um, had were in need of services that Paga could provide.
Hmm.
I think ultimately that those initiatives they made decisions ultimately not to go forward with those,
Yep.
because they realized as well that cultures were different.
Hmm.
And of course, we haven't even talked about time zones.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
you know, when you're, I even find here on the West Coast of, I'm in California, I still have problems with the East Coast folks calling me up at 5 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
just expecting, hey, it's the beginning of my day. No, it's not. It's the beginning of
Oh,
your day.
that is so true. We had, I mean,
So,
the company, we had GTP, what a journey that was. But Tulsa, Oklahoma originally was focused on Latin America, uh, but the partnerships didn't work out there. And then entrepreneur from Cote d'Ivoire comes and we wound up working in Africa. But when it's 8 a.m. in Tulsa, it could be 5 p.m. in Nairobi and 10, and we wound up I came in, I started there was a song, I forget who did it, was it has the lyrics about it's 3 a.m. I forget the
oh
name,
yeah, I know what you mean.
three doors down, whatever. And we had a 3 a.m. crew, and it was almost like who got the short straw? Well, you're working at three because that's and what it triggered though, when as part of 20 I'll do a quick diversion here. Actually, I'll come back to this, but it's 2020. Can you believe we're 5 years since COVID? Uh, I remember March of 2020, we had such a hit, the market crashed. But
Right.
a month later in Africa, it actually was a boon for us because it was a catalyst for digital payment development.
Sure.
And then we saw money coming in, and our discussions went on with On Afrique. And part of the reason we came together was to be more African, that we'd move, operations, the customer facing piece to Africa. And Anna Africa has handled that really well with Nigerian, Lagos, Nairobi, Johannesburg, other offices. But it's a practicality. But I like coming back to Paga. They're thinking about that and what are you leveraging? And you need to have a certain core because when you're going to grow, you're going to face those cultural issues, those regulatory issues, but what are you leveraging? Is there a core technology as a platform? Because you don't want to be bespoke in every market. You're never going to get the leverage you want and the margin
Right.
growth you want.
Right. No, you're right. In Latin America, there's a company called Rappi, very famous company. I think last round of financing, I think was done at $8 or $10 billion, or somewhere, between $5 and $10 billion, doing a lot of interesting things. And they came out of Colombia, high, very, very high penetration rate in Colombia. But then they've tried to go into other countries,
Mhm.
not as successfully, even within Latin America.
Yeah,
And of course, in Latin America, everybody thinks it's, everybody speaks Spanish. But guess what? Largest country there is Brazil.
that's
They don't
right.
speak Spanish, they speak Portuguese.
That's right.
And and it's a different form of Portuguese even. So
Yep.
so it can be very, very different within these continents. We're very fortunate. We're, really both blessed as well as cursed with, we just have one language here in the US.
Right.
And yes, people do speak Spanish, but people speak, as you and I both know, Polish or
Right.
some other
Yep. Yep.
language. And but for the most part, people speak English, and it really makes things, work a lot smoother when there are other different, languages, different cultures,
Mhm.
different time zones that all, and then different regulatory issues and
Right.
so forth can really make it difficult.
Yeah, no, this is really, I'm, thinking through, I'm, like working, I want to focus on, these regulatory hurdles and, do more thinking about how do you get to that B round and where does that funding come in? Doing some exploring with sources, some public sources, which may be European, GCC, more sovereign wealth. Not sure that there won't be much public funding coming out of the U.S. at least till we see how all Doge and stuff sorts out. And I'm not sure exactly where U.S. investors are going to if they'll come in at that B round, what they're where they're looking, or will the U.S. role come more from companies that'll make acquisitions in Africa? I'm still thinking through that.
Yeah, well, that's you and I think we're, right in the middle of the sausage making, so to speak. And
Yep.
I do know that, when I talk with the investors from Africa, I'm hearing that there are really good opportunities because not only is entrepreneurship kind of taken hold within the continent, which is really great news because it certainly hadn't, um, you know, prior to the last, 5 to 8 years or something like that.
Right.
And entrepreneurs are more sophisticated now. They understand scaling, they understand product market fit, they understand how difficult it can be in another country and so forth. They understand how to assess market opportunities and whatnot. And but in talking to the investors that I know, valuations are really quite good in Africa these days at early stage.
Hmm.
That actually will help out long term because um, then when you need a Series A, it doesn't have to be, 3 times or 4 times some larger number like it
Right.
is in the US.
Hmm.
It can be maybe it's 2 or 3 times more times a smaller number, a 2.5 or 3 or 5 million valuation as opposed to a 15 or 20 million valuation here in the US. When
Right.
you work through all the numbers, as you probably know, that really makes a big difference
Right.
because most of these companies are going to get acquired, if you take historically,
Mm-hmm.
are going to get acquired for, 25, 50, $60 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the exceptions that are going to see 100, 200, $300 million acquisitions.
Hmm.
And so it really does matter a lot at what you came in at as an investor. If
Hmm.
you came in at a pre-money of 20 million and your company got acquired for 50, well, you've made some money,
Hmm.
but it hasn't been quite the home run that you thought.
Right.
If you
Right.
came in at 3 million and your
Hmm.
company got acquired at 50 million, then you're going to make some serious money and that'll be good for your LPs. So this bodes well for Africa, at least at the present time.
I think so. It's exciting, and you see the talent in those organizations and at that stage. Um, and I'm enjoying working with some of these early stage funds. Where I think there see some of a gap, and I mean, I think you've looked at it as well as just the talent pool at a level below. You have the entrepreneur and the leadership, but how do you build out the rest of the team and recognize the team you need for that first million in revenue is going to have to be augmented in some ways, replaced as you get to 10 and 20, you get to that next stage of growth. Um, how do you see that? Have you been able to really got into that, how that talent pool is developing? Are there certain markets better than others above the developer team? I've seen, a lot of technology development, but you're mentioning now, even, of the other parts, the other business functions, you're seeing some expertise, a talent pool growing.
Well, I'll be incredibly truthful here is that I haven't examined that in the kind of detail I'd like to, just statistically. It's mine is mostly anecdotal.
Hmm.
But I will tell you that um, what is universal, I believe, at least in our philosophy as investors,
Hmm.
is that when I'm looking at making an investment, I'm looking at the person at the helm or the people at the helm.
Hmm.
Can they not only take the company through product market fit, first product into the marketplace, get a few deals, get some ARR going and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
But can they take it to the next level where the company is growing, nicely? It's hit the $5 million mark, it's hit the $10 million mark, it's hit 20 million and it's looking toward 50 and so on. Those companies, but those founders are they're not everywhere.
Hmm.
Um, they may be, and many of them are technical in nature because these are technical opportunities that they're pursuing, or at least the answers and the innovations are technical
Hmm.
based, but they've never really proven themselves as leaders
Hmm.
or as managers. Leaders meaning being inspirational, having a vision, being able to understand how to attract people for that vision and that sort of thing. And managers to put in processes that are important, that as a company grows, you can't just keep doing it heavy lifting. You've got to put in processes, whether that's technology,
Hmm.
accounting packages or
Hmm.
CRM packages or what have you to allow a company to grow. So do either of these founders or both of them have the kind of skill sets
Hmm.
to be able to grow actually ahead of the company and
Hmm.
not fall behind? What most investors, I would say in the US and other places that I've talked to, no one really wants to see a founder leave
Hmm.
or leave the CEO desk or the COO desk and have to replace that with a business professional
Hmm.
because no one's ever going to have the passion for what that company can become any more than the founder of the company.
Hmm.
So making those kinds of decisions from a board perspective, from an investor perspective, are very difficult ones. They're really generally, really thinking through things.
Yep.
And more, I've gotten to things through before making an investment rather than after making an investment and realizing that, well, this founder has taken it only so far, and
Right.
now we're flattening out because,
Hmm.
we just don't have the vision any longer or the skill sets, to
Hmm.
take it to the next level.
Hmm. No, very true. Good, very good insights on that. That passion piece is important. Passion with a purpose, I'd say, is
Yeah.
really what you, and that'll lead to the right performance. Um, Maybe shifting gears a little bit, just your thoughts on, AI in terms of how it may be most effectively applied in African fintech. And I'm thinking of two categories. One is a tool to help companies themselves perhaps gain productivity with onboarding or risk management, or perhaps it's kind of like the gold rush in California. Some of the most successful companies weren't the miners; it was the folks selling the pickaxes and the tents and the supplies, and maybe the AI as a tool company. Maybe that's a play there as well. How have you seen much of that? Is that an area you've investigated in Africa?
I haven't investigated in Africa, although I do think that you're hitting upon, the tools. CRM in particular, combined with AI can really be helpful
Hmm.
in the entire sales process, and that's a revenue driver for a company. And then, of course, on servicing customers, so customer success,
Hmm.
customer questions, chats, and so forth. That can be very helpful for with AI involved in that, really helping inexperienced helpers on the other end of the line, trying to
Right.
explain to either a consumer or a business how a product works,
Hmm.
or trying to troubleshoot and so forth. AI can really be a help
Hmm.
there. But one other one, speaking of the fact that there are so many countries and so many languages and so many dialects and so forth, is having AI be an enabler for real-time translation,
Ah.
even more
Hmm.
importantly, real-time interpretation. So if I'm talking to you in French, you want to hear me in English,
Right.
even though your French may be good,
Hmm.
from a business perspective, if I'm really talking pretty fast, because I'm an excited customer trying to
Right.
trying to get
Right.
something to work. So,
Yep.
I'm going to be I'm going to be on steroids right now. You
Sure.
may not pick up, all the words, and that chews up a lot of time. But
Yep.
if your AI engine was translating me real time, like I'm talking in French, but you're hearing it in your Midwestern dialect in English,
Right.
that could be extremely helpful. And then in turn, if you're responding back,
Hmm.
it goes back both ways, then that can be very powerful tool for customer service uh, 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 calls and servicing customers.
No, I agree, and it's just I remember the the trips to Abidjan, for example, or Dakar, and the meetings were in French, and I had two approaches. One was I kind of called it the kind of the leapfrogging. So much of the business you'd have English phrases, you could capture the sense of it, but you spend so much energy. It was draining because you had to listen
Yeah,
closer
yeah,
and you respond, and then I could tap on my friend Serge or Michelle, and they would help
sure.
me. But you also want to find a way to gain a rapport beyond just this, the matter of fact conversation. How do you,
Right.
how
Right.
build upon it? And if you can use that, it frees up your mind to really go beyond and start to build a relationship and take the discussion to the next level.
No, you're right. It can be very tiring because you're concentrating so
Yep,
much and so forth. You're just beat by the end of the day.
yep, yep.
So,
No, those are good thoughts. The other one I want to catch up before we run out of time is just the broad area of crypto, which I've never really uh, I've been skeptical of crypto. I follow blockchain. We've used it in some commercial transactions. But now that I look at stable coin is and maybe there's a there there. Um, and in terms of markets like Nigeria, we've had a lot of issues with the stability of that currency. And Nigeria's gone back and forth. Crypto's bad, crypto's good. Now they're advancing it between them and South Africa. They've probably been the biggest adopters of crypto. Uh, but have you done much with stablecoin, or you have an opinion on that? Good, bad, wait and see.
Well, we've been investigating that. We're going to have one speaker in our class talk about blockchain and crypto,
Okay.
and I'm running an investment course in the fall that I'll probably want you to attend as well on early stage investing. I'm going to have another person talk about specifically crypto.
Hmm.
Uh, what what I think, we've seen the different administrations here in the US go back and forth. So the Democratic administration, the past 4 years, was not exactly supportive of crypto.
Hmm.
And that showed as crypto as just being kind of an outlier
Yep.
and, really special situation, people just confused by it, stay away from it.
Hmm.
Very limited market, relatively speaking, to say other things that you could invest in and so on. But now, of course, what we've seen with the emergence of the Trump administration is that we have a direct report on crypto in the
Right.
White, in Washington and the administration. I won't have to mention any of the names who are circling around the president, but
Yep.
it's pretty clear and he's already on record. I think I don't forget whether it was in Nashville or somewhere last year where he announced
Mhm.
that he wanted the U.S. to be really the leader in
Right.
crypto,
Right.
right? So people don't talk about blockchain very much because it's not as well known. It's really more of a infrastructure type
Right.
technology.
Right.
It's not something that you talk about, as consumers.
Mhm.
But of
Right.
course, crypto very much depends upon blockchain,
Yep.
but I think that with a firm direction on crypto, which I think we're getting from the administration,
Mhm.
despite all the other things that
Right.
we're hearing from the administration that sort of gets lost sometimes,
Right.
is I think that will have a weighing on a lot of other countries. Because, let's face it, when the US decides upon doing something and they do it in a big, big way,
Yep.
and they're all in, so to speak, then other countries take that lead and say, okay, this is going to stay for a long period of time. We can start investing in that as well.
Yep.
And when the US is flip-flopping around,
Yep.
then countries get confused and regulatory and so forth. So many of the countries that we're talking about in Africa or Latin America, they don't have the infrastructure in their government to be able to do the in-depth kind of analysis
Hmm.
and understanding that European countries and the US can do.
Yeah.
And so they're
Right.
dependent upon hearing more about regulations, about standards,
Hmm.
about what constitutes, free market, not so free market, what needs to be announced to consumers and to other businesses and so on. And I think that um, when these standards and these ways of doing business with crypto emerge better, more firmly, I think we'll start to see more and more of that.
Yeah, I do
Of
see.
course, one other factor is, of course, can crypto be a hedge against inflation? I mean,
Yep.
some countries are really going through quite a bit of inflation, and
Mhm.
yet, would crypto be able to help solve some of the problems that inflation causes?
Yeah, I think with that and its and stability, the attractiveness of the Nigeria versus the Naira. But I'd followed it. I'd say even my time with GTP and even at Visa that I came from a certain perspective as a payment vehicle and just didn't make sense because it was too volatile. Say Bitcoin to be specific.
Sure, sure,
And oh, the transaction's final. Well, yeah, but what if you're not happy with the product you got? And where's all the supporting?
right.
So I kind of put that aside, but now I look at it more in terms of a store value and maybe a hedge. And we'll see. I'm aggressively looking at it. I'm aggressively standing in one place and looking,
Well,
see
let's
what comes
keep
out of it.
trading information back and
Yeah.
forth. It comes out every day, and
Yeah,
it's
no,
it's all
it's
interesting
fun,
to
and
see.
it's been we had to deal with that as when we dealt with 40 different countries in Africa with GTP and always preferred to get paid in dollars, but in Nigeria we had to get naira, and the money went in, but it never came out. We'd wind up just finding ways to spend it in Nigeria.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's do that. Well, that's a guarantee, and uh,
If we've seen in the U.S., we've seen now just got announced was a week or so ago that there's now going to be a reserve,
right.
in a sense, a sovereign reserve fund, and I think there are five. Bitcoin's one of them, and a bunch of others are as well, are in that reserve. So things are coming out in bits and pieces,
Yeah.
so to speak, and but to be determined. But it looks pretty positive for crypto and for that matter, blockchain.
Yeah, I think so. It's and it's I think bringing it under. I like your the discipline there. We hate regulation, but you need structure. You want predictability. You want a certain confidence, and I think this fits into. I talked about a post-Bretton Woods world order where we got a U.S. as the settlement currency. Well, to remain in that role, we're going to need to do a couple of things. I think the crypto Bitcoin stablecoin needs to be a part of it. We need to get
Stablecoin needs definitely, we didn't talk about that, but stablecoin definitely needs to be a part of that for sure.
Yeah, I think that it could be. And if you look at it, I had conversations with some of the Visa folks working on this, and they almost wanted to set up a parallel Visa. We had that issue again about how do you handle chargeback disputes, and all of a sudden it started to look like another, but it came down to you needed a fiat currency behind it. Well, what's it going to be? Well, Central African Republic, its currency is not going to work, and El Salvador is not going to work. So what do you have? Euro, maybe. Well, really, a lot defaults back to the
Right,
U.S.
right.
and to me, I think a lot of it is I'll come back to favorite topic here, talking about Doge, and I have one number for folks when they talk about Doge. It's 36 trillion. I mean, there's a huge deficit equal to our GDP. May not like what Doge is, how it's doing, but it really has to find a way to bend that curve
Right,
and get real about that.
right.
Um, but anyway, Steve, I know you've got a busy calendar there. I really wanted to thank you for this. And I
Oh,
know our guests.
it's been a real lively conversation, Rich. We covered a lot of topics. I'm not sure that we got into a whole lot of detail in those, but maybe next time around, after some of my trips, I'll be able to be more intelligent about my anecdotes and maybe
Oh,
more statistics are coming out.
I will take you up on that. I think we want to orient my followers, just overview, and then I get feedback on what we want to drill down. I've had from other ones, interest on AI, interest on stablecoin. But I want to thank you for what you've given us here. It's fun talking to you, and I wish I was with you in Casablanca. I had a few trips there. One of my favorite places to go is Le Cabestan because of its view. It's right on the North Atlantic coastline. And if you get an evening dinner there with a view, food's good, but it's more of the view that's there. It's quite outstanding. And then the other fun trip was I had a chance. I don't know if you remember a song. This will date us. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, or maybe it was Crosby, Stills and Nash, the Marrakesh Express. I took
Yes,
that with a friend of mine. Went from the visa office in Casablanca. We went down to Marrakesh, landed there about 7 at night, and just explored the city. Got into the Medina. It was
right,
wild.
right.
But anyway, I'm sure you're gonna have a great trip, and I'm gonna see you before you
You
go
will,
there.
you will. So look forward to having you out in April, late April, I think,
Yep.
and good luck with this podcast. It's an awful lot of fun. You got a great style and keep it going.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Be well. Take care.
Thanks, Rich.
All
Okay,
right.
take care.